Let me bring in Sir Desmond Swayne now, the Conservative MP for New Forest West and, of course, a member of the COVID recovery group. Sir Desmond, great to have you here. Lots of threatening language coming out of our leaders and scientific advisors at the moment. We had Nicola Sturgeon yesterday plunging much of Scotland into lockdown and saying, you've got to be good children if you want to get any chance to have a family Christmas. Then today we have Dr. Susan Hopkins saying, young children, if you want to have Christmas with your family, we're then going to be plunged into lockdown throughout January. These threats have to stop, don't they?
Yeah, are we a liberal Western democracy or some totalitarian state? I mean, I'm quite prepared to listen to anyone's advice about what will keep me and others safe. But it is for me and my family to decide what risks we're prepared to encounter. And I would remind these people that the last administration that sought to interfere with the celebration of Christmas was Oliver Cromwell's. And he was left asking the question in public if arming 1 in 10 of the population would be enough to enforce it.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And I mean, there's a lot of messages coming into me, Sir Desmond, right now saying it's going to take a hell of a lot of police officers to try and stop the country celebrating Christmas, which is why, by the way, we should be doing all of this, I think, with education and with enlightenment rather than with constant hectoring and threats. That approach actually would make more sense in terms of getting the country to comply with the rules anyway.
I agree entirely with you and with your correspondent. You know, if we were being asked and encouraged to do things, people would actually be much more cooperative. You know, it's clear that the current system of telling people what they must do isn't working.
No.
People resent it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And rightly too.
And
it makes my blood boil.
Yeah, no, I think people are becoming increasingly angry. And actually, it's very interesting just walking around London. That's obviously where I am. But many people who phone the show say the same thing is happening in their town or their city. People are starting to resist now, Sir Desmond. They are out on the streets. And I don't mean troublemakers, by the way. I mean ordinary folk who have decided that it's not sensible, looking at all of the data, looking at all of the facts themselves, it's no longer sensible to be locked in their homes in perpetuity. Oh, I think we've seemed to lost Sir Desmond there. Hopefully we will get him back. In the meantime, let me read out some of your text messages. Oh, I think we've got you back, Sir Desmond. Is that right? Can you hear us? While we're just trying to get him, let's have a listen to Alok Sharma on Julia Hartley-Brewer. Okay, great. Let's just listen to Alok Sharma on Julia Hartley-Brewer's show this morning. This is what the business secretary had to say about Christmas, and I'll get you to respond off the back.
The reality is that none of us can predict right now what the infection rate, what the R rate will be in any part of the country as we get closer to Christmas. I hope, like everyone else, that we will have as normal a Christmas as we can get. It's not a normal year. I think we all accept that. I want to have my mum and dad around the Christmas table. I want to have members of my extended family, but we just have to see where we get to. So I think, frankly, it's too early to say where we will end up in a month and a bit from now.
So Desmond Swayne, is that good enough saying it's too early? Because it's becoming, I think, really difficult for people's mental health to not be able to plan anything.
I agree entirely. It's wherever we are in terms of infection rates when it comes to Christmas, it is for us to make the assessment and the decision of whether we invite Granny round. And it's for her to decide whether she's prepared to take that risk, not for some minister to tell us.
Yeah, totally. So what is the plan now? Because the COVID recovery group obviously has a strong block of MPs lobbying hard, lobbying the Prime Minister hard. He has to take you seriously because there's a lot of you. Do you have any idea what the plan is post December 2nd? Are there going to be this new series of regional tiers, strengthened tiers, perhaps a tier 4, which is essentially lockdown in another name?
Yeah, well, that's the fear, is that we'll come out of lockdown and go to some other form of lockdown. And that appeared to be what was being done with the rolling of the pitch the day before yesterday for that. But nevertheless, you know, there is a strong body of us now making this argument. And thankfully, many more clinicians and scientists making that argument. And I've always felt that that has been Boris's instinct, that he's with us instinctively, although he has been captured by this scientific establishment, these crazed scientists who want to lock us all up. I mean, the reality is, if you ask a scientist, how do you stop a disease that spreads by human contact? Don't be surprised if they tell you, stop all human contact. But it's for us as politicians, and indeed ordinary people, to make the decision of whether that stopping human contact is worth the cost that it incurs. And that's our decision. That's ordinary people's decision, to make the decision for themselves. Try and persuade them, engage them, but stop giving us orders as if we were slaves.
Doesn't there need to be some alternative voices on stage as well? Because all of these scientists seem to operate in terms of group think when it comes to sage. But actually, if you look out there, there are many scientists in other parts of the world who are saying there is another approach. I mean, I'm very fascinated by this new study today published in Nature Human Behavior, which analysed 6,000 non-pharmaceutical interventions used in 79 countries during this pandemic. And they actually worked out that it was far, far better to just communicate the importance of social distancing rather than try and impose distancing measures by law. So actually, many of these draconian measures aren't necessarily even going to prove to be effective in the long term.
Well, that was the original plan. I mean, I remember well back in March, the original plan was to rely on exactly that. There was never going to be a lockdown. Then all of a sudden, we were spooked, or the government was spooked, by this prediction from Professor Neil Ferguson, that if we didn't go into a lockdown, there would be 250,000 deaths. I mean, it's that scientific establishment represented on stage that, frankly, I think is now the biggest problem that we face.
Yeah, I agree.